I want to talk to you about pluggable culture, which is a concept that I've been talking with people about, and it's things that I've seen happening. But first, you've got two questions. First, who's this guy? And Tikva did a little bit of that for me, but I'm one of the co-founders of NYCResistor. Some of you know it, some of you don't. It's a hacker space where we learn, share, and make things. And we get to see people who don't generally do what they do there in their regular life experiment. So what is pluggable culture? Pluggable culture is the idea that technology and innovation are changing, that things which used to be complex and take deep technical knowledge are becoming something more akin to cooking, where you take complex but easy to use things and mix them together in delicious ways. And you can even read easy recipes to do that. So we see this happen every day at NYCResistor. We see people who are artists and makers come in and do things which are deeply technical. And yes, Marius here is wearing an apron with a keyboard sewn into it, holding a hot glue gun. So interesting things happen when people who are artistic and who aren't engineers at the core start getting to play with things that are outside of the deep study. So one of the ways this is happening is with the Arduino. The Arduino is an open source microcontroller board which makes it easy for artists and non-technical people to get into electronics. And you can do incredible things with it. You can make coats that blink or art bots that drive around and paint a painting. You can make books that breathe. These are just some art projects that were shown at one of our parties. So there's also an interesting feedback that's happening between the Arduino and this thing that makes it easier for artists to do electronics, and the fact that the artists are now feeding back and making electronics more interesting. And my friend Alicia has actually written her thesis, her art history thesis on this. There's also another way that Arduino is changing the way things happen. So many of you know Bree, he's here in the audience. He's one of the founders of MakerBot. They make a 3D printer that you can print yourself. And the beginnings of MakerBot started with Arduino, with building on top of this easy-to-use thing. The three founders of MakerBot are not engineers by trade. They were able to do that on top of that new technology. So we start with hardware. I also want to talk a little bit about how pluggable culture is happening in the software world. So this same shift where people who are not deeply technical in each individual field get to play around is happening there. And we have powerful, complex functionality that you get to mix together in interesting ways and make something delicious. So one of the first ways this is happening in a huge way, it's now just de facto, we know about it, but you used to have to write a user class, understand what data you wanted to gather from your users, and then hope that they asserted their identity in a meaningful way. Now you can plug that in with one button. We used to have to hope that our users would email something to one user, maybe two, to get the word out. Now we plug Twitter in, and media companies are getting to do this with a button. It changes the way that we think about technology and the way we invent and innovate new things. So this is accelerating as we go. People are now building tools for hackers to plug in and mix together. Twilio's building telephony tools that you can make calls with. SendGrid's making it easy to send thousands of emails reliably. SimpleGeo's plugging in location so that you can just mix and match this stuff. And so Chris and I are founding YAYfriends, and we're able to do these things in incredible speed, even though Chris started life as an architect and I started life as a theater nerd. We're able to take these pieces and mix them together into a fun application. So we're building on pluggable pieces. We're running on top of Heroku, which runs on top of Amazon with Rails. We're plugging in Twitter and Facebook and SendGrid and SimpleGeo, all these things to make an application in an incredibly short amount of time. But there's one more interesting thing that's part of pluggable culture. These pieces nest and stack. So you start with Amazon, you put an asterisk on it, and then you can build Twilio. People build on top of Twilio to make Venmo that lets you make payments. And Venmo exposes an API. So you can roll these pieces up like a snowball and build incredibly complex things just by plugging in a piece that's down the line. So if you come away thinking about this was one thing, technical innovation has changed, and I had a chance to speak with some students at NYU and really get to understand that they know this with everything in them. They know that they don't have to understand every little bit of the technology they need to build. They just need to mix it together and start building. So that's my call to you. If you're technical, stop reinventing the wheel. Heck, stop reinventing the car and get plugging together. Get on with building the fun stuff. If you're not technical, this is all within your reach. Welcome to the pluggable culture. We live in it.